People should be able to vote in the primaries however they register.
We have to open the primaries so that independents have full and equal voting rights.
Open primaries would encourage more reasonable candidates.
Open primaries.
Open primaries.
Open primaries.
We're on the ballot in 8 states. That has never happened before.
Political activists looking to shake up Arizona's election system.
Open primaries and ranked choice voting could completely change the election landscape in Nevada.
Montana's elections could look very different.
Proposition 1 will now move before Idaho voters on November 5th.
And Make All Votes Count DC, a ballot initiative 83 on the ballot.
One of the most impactful ballot initiatives all Colorado voters will see is the open primary.
This evolution has been produced by ordinary people.
I mean, everyone right now is thinking, hey, who's going to win in November? And the question for us all is, are the people going to win? So we matter again.
This is about giving full status to independent voters and candidates and treating everybody the same way.
To bring balance back so the voters have more power in this system.
The states are the laboratory of democracy, so I think it's wonderful that every state can take, from all these great ideas that different people in the movement and different states have, and create, a solution that's right for their state.
But what's the same is what we hear in objection to us, right? We want to bring this to the voters to vote. What our opposition wants to do is take it off the ballot and not let the people have a say.
Our core message is stronger than the opposition's core message, so we just need to communicate with as many voters as possible.
It's invigorating to be among such American patriots, really excited for what your efforts could lead to in just a few short weeks.
Keep this fight going. We're working on it here across the state in Oklahoma, and it is so vitally important.
Open up the system and let all voters vote.
Open up the primaries and let all voters vote! 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 Let all voters vote!
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making time to join our virtual national rally for Open Primaries. My name is John Updike. I'm the president of Open Primaries. It's great to see so many old friends and new faces. We actually have people from 46 states on tonight's virtual rally. And my co-host tonight is Andrew Yang. Andrew's someone who inspires me and millions of people across the country on a daily basis. He's a former presidential candidate and co-founder of the Forward Party. Hi, Andrew.
It's great to be here with you. Wow, someone texted, who are the 4 states that aren't here? And it's certainly not Idaho, because or Tennessee, I see. But it's awesome to be here. This is you're the leader of a phenomenal organization, and this is a movement that is trying to stick up for the 51% of Americans or so who feel like they're on the outside. And I dare say if 50% had a little bit more clout, we might even have different, better choices than the ones we're faced with.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It's awesome to be here with you, John. Yeah. But congratulations to Open Primaries for making this case day in, day out, really when other people, are content to ignore it, because this is, to me, the path to genuine freedom in America.
Thanks for saying that. I was, in thinking about this event tonight, I was thinking back to when I started Open Primaries 15 years ago and how much things have developed and changed. And, I say this on the media all the time. When I started Open Primaries, the experience was like founding a UFO research organization. People looked at me like I was a little off. And now there's a national conversation. And I think about tonight's event and how this evolution has been produced by ordinary people speaking up all over the country in all kinds of situations, on the media and at the grassroots, to simply say, hey, independents need to be fully included in our democracy. If we're gonna reach our potential as a country, everybody needs a seat at the table. And I feel really excited about this being a year when we have an opportunity to make some real breakthroughs. We're on the ballot in 8 states. That has never happened before. So thanks for co-hosting this. All right, we've got a great program lined up. You're gonna get to talk to the leaders of these 8 campaigns. We're gonna do some poll questions. We're gonna hear from some special guests. But before we do that, before we introduce our campaign leaders, wanted to take a look at a short video that kind of takes a look at how did we get here. Go ahead, cue the video.
I'm an independent. I don't want to join a party, and I shouldn't have to.
We have to open the primary so that independents have full and equal voting rights.
People are forced to pick a party, and I think a lot of politicians are hearing complaints from their constituents about that.
The people should be able to vote in the primaries however they register.
It's saying that you are okay to pay taxes, but it's not okay to vote because you believe something differently.
I can't imagine us being able to call ourselves a democracy here. What are the parties, the 2 major parties, afraid of?
We need to open the primaries.
I feel disenfranchised that I cannot vote.
It really bothers me that I cannot vote in them. Fix it.
This isn't working.
Lewis is only partly kidding about a fight. He wants to overturn the state's closed primary system, a system that excludes tens of thousands of independent voters from primaries. And he knows he's about to hit a nerve.
What you're saying is, I don't like the way America runs its political system. Well, if you don't like it, move to another country. Move to another country. Move to another country.
The number of voters who can't vote in a primary because they are not registered to a party has gone from 15 million to 27 million.
And yet we have closed primaries. It doesn't make any sense.
The parties have since convinced us that they own the primaries, but that's not their origin story.
Partisan primaries have become weaponized by the political extremes on both sides.
We're leaving out all of these folks who are desperate for their voices to be heard.
Closed primaries are the biggest voter suppression mechanism in this state.
Biggest voter suppression that there is in this country.
The right of every American to vote is one of the most fundamental rights in America.
These closed party processes are distorting everyone's political incentives and pushing our leaders towards more extreme points of view than most Americans actually believe.
Independents only got to vote in 22 Democratic and Republican primaries.
This is a system which clearly needs wholesale reform.
Open primaries will encourage more reasonable candidates.
Open primary.
Open primaries.
Open primaries.
Political activists looking to shake up Arizona's election system.
Open primaries and ranked choice voting could completely change the election landscape in Nevada.
Montana's elections could look very different.
Proposition 1 will now move before Idaho voters on November 5th.
And Make All Votes Count DC, a ballot initiative 83 on the ballot.
One of the most impactful ballot initiatives all Colorado voters will see is the open primary and ranked choice voting measure.
We are the people of Alaska. We have the right to vote for who we want to vote on that ballot.
Our political system is really underserving the greatness of our country.
If you want to have a healthy democracy, you want participation, particularly participation by people who want to vote.
What we have done today is a milestone. We have done a fabulous job of hitting every single county in the state of Idaho and getting support for open primaries.
Montanans for Election Reform ultimately argue that these 2 ballot measures will help reduce polarization in politics, less money in politics, and give Montanans candidates that more accurately represent their views and not the views of special interest groups.
Nearly 40% of Nevada voters are not registered to one of the 2 major parties. That's the largest voting bloc in our state.
There is a grassroots effort to change the primary voting system in South Dakota.
I can't think of a more important right for South Dakotans than the right to vote.
My voice is muted, so I feel that my voice needs to be heard equally as everyone else's voice.
When I realized that I couldn't vote in the primary, my reaction was, it's bullshit, and I'm going to change it.
I don't need anyone to tell me that I have to think either A or B.
open up the primaries and let all voters vote. Let all voters vote. Let all voters vote. Let all voters vote. Let all voters vote.
All right. Boy, that was inspirational. We've certainly come a long way.
That got me pumped up too, John. Let voters vote.
What's that?
Let voters vote. Let voters
Yeah.
vote. That's pretty
Let
good.
all voters vote. It's a simple mantra, but it means a lot. All right. Before we introduce our intrepid campaign leaders, take out your smartphones. We're going to ask some poll questions during the rally. And all you need to do is send a text to 22333 with the message open24. You can also scan the QR code on your screen. You'll get a reply text that confirms that you've joined the session. You only need to do this once, and then you can submit answers to the poll questions that we ask. So again, send a text to 22333, put in open24, and then you're all set to answer poll questions. Finally, we're going to open it up for your questions. If you want to ask a question, go to the chat, type your name, your state, and a one-sentence description of what you want to ask, and we'll get you in the queue. We're going to open it up for Q&A later in the program. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. We have Julie Lucky, the campaign manager of No On 2 in Alaska. Sarah Smallhouse, the campaign chair of Make Elections Fair Arizona. Jason Bertolacci, the chief of staff to Kent Theory and the Yes on Prop 131 campaign in Colorado. Luke Mayville, the senior advisor to Idahoans for Open Primaries. David Ocklander, Veterans for Montana Voters, the Yes on 126 campaign. Heather Otzi from Nevada, the Vote Yes on 3 campaign. Jenny Kirby, the campaign manager of Amendment H in South Dakota. And last but not least, Lisa Rice, the proposer of Initiative 83 in Washington, D.C. She's also a board member at Unite America, a national spokesperson for Open Primaries, and the D.C. state leader for Veterans for All Voters. She does not sleep, Lisa Rice. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hi. Here.
All right. We're going to open it up with a question here. Tell us what was going on in your state, or in your case, Lisa, in your city, that started to create pressure to move towards open primaries. Maybe it was last year, maybe it was 10 years ago. What's been building up in your state that led you to create these campaigns?
Good question. Thanks, John. What was building up here in DC was cycle after cycle of multi-candidate Democratic primaries. Dems are the supermajority in DC,
right.
And lots of us, 1 in 6 DC voters, unable to vote because we are independents. And you know, it just became untenable. And as you heard from my potty mouth statement, it's bullshit, and I wanted to change
bullshit.
it.
Right.
That simple. That simple.
Well, I'll say that in Arizona, we've made the national news for having the craziest state capital ever. It's been one thing after another. But I think that the real pressure that came up in Arizona was the fact that really good people were getting primaried out of office. And enough people started taking notice of that. And it's been the business groups in Arizona that have been looking for a little bit more stability, a little bit longer time frame, and a little bit more focus on fundamental issues. And it all came together in this beautiful moment, and we have a path to victory, and we're going to seize it. It's been a long haul, but there's consensus building from the center in Arizona, and independents are now closing on Republicans. Will probably pass them this election, and the parties are just not speaking to people here anymore.
Interesting.
Well, here in Idaho, a number of years ago, many of us were involved in a big campaign to expand Medicaid with a ballot initiative. And the legislature had refused to do it for 6 years. Election night that year was a big shocker because it turned out 61% of the voters approved of this healthcare policy that the legislature had long rejected. We worked on a number of similar issues for years after that, but then a couple of years ago, we decided that we really needed to try to go to the root cause of this disconnect between the people and the legislature by actually taking on the closed primary system, because many of us have diagnosed the closed primary system as really the root cause of that disconnect, and it's really caught flame. We now have over 2,000 volunteers with the Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition. We have over 5,000 donors in the state of Idaho from all 44 of the state's counties. And now we're just gearing up to launch probably the biggest Get Out the Vote campaign in the history of our state. So it's an honor to be here with you all and part of this national movement.
That's so impressive. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to add that similarly in Montana, so many of the voters are just getting so tired of the noise. Legislators have just been taking an approach from both sides that everything has to be about win-lose. And the overwhelming theme that I've heard from voters is that voters want better candidates, and they recognize that voting reform is a way to begin that process. And they want lawmakers to stop creating issues. They want them to start fixing issues. And again, voting reform is the road to do that.
Yeah, in South Dakota, we long were a two-party state. We had Tom Daschle, George McGovern, Tim Johnson, all serving, in Washington, D.C. for us. And just over the last 15, 20 years, it's just become a one-party state. And the one-party state approach does not work with our primary system anymore. And so there's just lack of cooperation. Everything is controlled by one party. And it's just not working anymore. And I think South Dakotans are sick and tired of it.
And in Colorado, we have independents now being the larger voter population than either Democrats or Republicans. We're going to probably crest in this coming year 50% of the voters being independents here in Colorado. So we were able to go to the voters in 2016 to actually move to semi-open or semi-closed primaries. And then in 2018 to do redistricting reform and move to independent redistricting commissions. But still in Colorado, 80% of our districts are single party districts. And as others have said, it just doesn't work to have partisan primaries in that type of a structure. So our campaign this year is to get rid of partisan primaries, party primaries altogether, move to true open primaries. And so we think that will get real representation for voters in the state.
So same picture in Arizona, 80% of our districts, it's foregone conclusion in the general. Action's over in the primary.
Yeah. I ran into someone today, pharmacist today, who said, "Oh, Lisa, you're still out campaigning. You're the only campaign in DC that's doing anything right here before the general, because everyone else stopped at the primary." So
it's over after the primary, right?
15 days left.
And think about how unhealthy that is for democracy.
Right.
Like Colorado has very high turnout in the general elections, but it's already a done deal. And so if you look at our primary elections, we had in this past cycle, 26% of the voters turned out. And that's not the way to elect somebody to represent an entire district or an entire state. It's just fundamentally wrong.
And even if they are semi-open or semi-closed, independents do not want to vote a straight partisan ballot. And so in Arizona, I think it was only 7% of independents signed up to participate in a primary. So you have distilled partisan primaries, and they produce distilled candidates that the general population doesn't really want to choose from.
In Montana, you've got 6% of the population electing 88% of the seats.
Wow.
It's already done after the primaries. And one of the really exciting things is that as a veteran, 50% of us are independent, 40% of Montanans are independent. And even because I have a great connection as a veteran with the conservative community in Montana, a vast majority of them are saying that the legislature does not represent conservative values anymore. And there have been a number of op-eds written by former governors, state legislators, judges, etc., who have come out and said, we've got to do better by the people and the voters.
So I think in Alaska, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't.
No, go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
We did a little backwards in the sense that we started having open primaries in 1947, and
Right.
we were actually closed because of a lawsuit. But every time Alaskan voters have been able to choose a single party ballot, we have. And we saw, since we're kind of, I think I'm the only no vote here because we're protecting it. But what we did see was 52% of people did cross party ballots in our primary, and we saw some of our, well, we don't have counties here, but the Wasilla district, which some of you might be familiar with Wasilla, since I guess our most famous Alaskan person is from that neck of the woods, but they had their first competitive race. I went back 20 years because that's the history that I had. It was within 5 points, and the closest race in the last 20 years has been 29 points in that district. So you really see that competition moving. I mean, we saw it firsthand. You see that competition moving from that closed primary to that general election where there's 40% more people turning out, and they had two candidates that they could choose from that they actually liked, as opposed to seeing the blowouts that we've seen in previous years.
Alaska's been the inspiration to us all, so we're rooting for you, Julie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I do want to point out that we got the highest number of independents in our state legislature this year, which at 6 out of 40 doesn't sound that high, but considering we're, you know, it's the most we've had ever in the history of Alaska. So we see it working here, and we are working really hard to keep it.
Arizona has never elected an independent to a statewide office. It's really illustrative of how it's being exclusionary.
Hey,
and Alaska does have, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask Andrew a question because Andrew travels the country. He's building the Forward Party. He's speaking on the media. This thing that Jenny said about South Dakota used to be, hey, they'd elect Democrats, they'd elect Republicans. Now it's just a one-party state. Is that something you are hearing from voters all across the country? Like, do people have a sense of that happening in their state?
Yeah, very much so. You know, Iowans talk about how there used to be sensible Democrats representing the state and how it was purplish, and then now it's pretty red state. Ohioans think the same thing. So that there are a lot of Americans that miss that sense of, hey, we are not completely beholden to one party or the other. We're not super polarized. We can have leaders from our community that go out and make things happen, and they don't get attacked right and left for compromising. It's actually a good thing. So a lot of Americans despair that has deserted them or us in this system, and it's activating more independence. I will say too, John, you say like I'm on the media. I'm going to be on CNN later tonight for independent. So I have to say he's this movement's cousin.
That's funny.
I might have paused there.
All right, cool. All right, we got a couple more questions here, but first we have a commercial break. We have, unlike, we're not going to try to sell you some carpets or a new car. We have a message from the mayor of Oklahoma City. David Holt.
Hi, this is David Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma City, America's 20th largest city, and I am so grateful for your participation in today's virtual rally. You know, I've run in closed partisan primaries and I've run in a top 2 nonpartisan primary. That's how I got elected mayor of Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City is known for having some of the most dynamic and effective governance in the entire country. And it's because we have an electoral system where all of the voters get to see all of the candidates and all of the candidates have to face all of the voters. However you define open primaries, anytime you meet those two principles, you have an electoral system that produces the best results, that are most reflective of the people we serve. So my hat's off to you. Keep this fight going. We're working on it here across the state in Oklahoma, and I know that Open Primaries is working on it across the country, and it is so vitally important. So thank you for your time today.
And they are working on it in Oklahoma. A lot of what's happening this year, you guys are paving the way. There are people all over the country, from Florida to Oregon to Oklahoma to Arkansas, who are ready for 26, for 28, for 2030. I think this is going to be the start of something very big this year. He mentioned something, David did, that however you define open primaries, one of the things I'm most excited about is each of you is working on a different form of open primaries. You've got top 2, top 4, final 5, open partisan primaries, open primaries with no definition of how many advance from the primary to the general. I think that's a sign of strength. How do you all think about that we're trying out so many different forms of open primaries?
The states are the laboratory of democracy. So I think it's wonderful that every state can take, from all these great ideas that different people in the movement and different states have, and create, a solution that's right for their state. So I think that diversity is strength, because every state is different. The voters are different. The state's issues are different. It can at times be a messaging challenge, but I think it's more important to have that diversity of ideas for each state to get the right solution for its state.
So in Arizona, we are not defining how many advance to the general election, and that is based on extensive research that we did. And Arizonans, they're split on this, and they're still deciding. Our proposition is a constitutional amendment. So what we decided was, well, what we should do is make sure open primaries are in our Constitution, and then allow the general election to evolve. We found that younger and more progressive voters really like ranked choice voting and more choice. Older voters and more conservative voters kind of like runoffs. And so we're leaving that to evolve with time as the state evolves.
Our democracy has been on a journey for generations. I think a lot of people here know that prior to 1904, there were no primaries, and then every state started to adopt it because of special interests and party bosses who were making decisions, and voters didn't like it. In 1912, Montana adopted primaries because the previous year, there was a horrible mining accident in Butte where 8 kids were killed in a mine shaft. And people had had enough of the Anaconda Mining Company appointing legislators who were not looking after voters. So what has happened since then is what we've seen is an action, and this is from my military strategic planning perspective. We always take this perspective of action, reaction, counteraction. And I think that's the cycle that we're in right now. 1904, there was an action. There's been a counteraction to corrupt the primary system. Now there needs to be a counteraction to bring balance back so the voters have more power in this system.
Well put.
Yeah.
Let me
agree.
ask, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's a strength to let every state customize the approach that works best for them. In 2016, we had an initiative on the ballot that was open primaries and taking away party affiliation on the ballot. It did not pass. And what we found in polling afterwards was that people didn't like removing the party affiliation. So we are keeping the party affiliation and we're going forward with open primaries. So I think it's just so important for every state to be able to customize exactly what works best for, you know, their specific circumstances.
I agree
right.
with I agree with Jason that it can be a bit of a messaging challenge to have all of the variety.
Sure.
But one thing I find encouraging is that across all these states, you do see a lot of similarity when it comes to principles, when it comes to the core principles underlying these reforms.
Right.
And I know there's even variety among the principles as well. But one way that I've often thought about it is just going right back to the Declaration of Independence and the idea that government must always be based on the consent of the governed. And you know, it doesn't say government is based on the consent of one small group of voters who participate in a partisan primary election. It says the governed, which means the broader citizenry, right? And that is a basic principle that most and maybe all of our campaigns seem to share.
Oh, they all do. I agree. It's kind of, there's all these different policies that give expression to this core values of everybody being able to participate. And that's very exciting.
Yeah, I tell you, we're all different. We all have, you know, there are nuances, but what's the same is what we hear in objection to us, right? All the opposition has the same talking points. So that's how I know that we are on track.
All right, Lisa, put a pin in that. Put a pin in that, because wait, before we go on, we're going to do a poll question for the audience. And then I want to come back to this question of what the opposition is doing. So, all right, get out your smartphones. We have a poll question here. So these are 8 really important campaigns. And I'll tell you this right now, the polling is close in every single one of these states. There's no slam dunks here. Everyone is going to be working all the way through election day. So the question is this: would you be willing to volunteer to make some phone calls to help out these campaigns? If you are, text 1 to 22333. Again, all you have to do is text the number 1 to 22333, and we will follow up with you and let you know exactly, and it's going to be easy. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here, how you can volunteer to make phone calls to voters for one or more of these campaigns. And it doesn't matter where you live. You can live in Hawaii, Oregon, Florida. You can help out these campaigns by making phone calls. So if you want to do that, just text 1 to 22333. All right, let's get back into this. I want to hear what let me ask 2 questions at once. What's the opposition doing? And what surprised you the most as you've been building your campaigns? What curveballs have you faced, and what's the opposition doing?
Well, the opposition, it's very interesting. The opposition, the formal opposition, the vote no on 83 campaign is they're being pretty defamatory toward me personally, towards our treasurer. And, you know, DC was formerly a majority Black city. We still have a large plurality of Black residents. And I've been cast as a Black face on a white movement. So not too pleased about that. But universally, what I think we see across all of these movements is the objections that we hear are along the lines of, you know, this is impeding on our rights to affiliation, you know, free association, this kind of thing. And it's just, you know, it's pretty weak. And what we find is that we are the joyful campaign. We want to bring this to the voters to vote. We want to bring this to the to the people, let the people decide. And that's what we're always saying. What our opposition wants to do is take it off the ballot and not let the people have a say. So when we are in public forums, it's pretty easy to see who is pro-voter and who isn't.
Interesting.
So in Arizona, the opposition, there's logical reasons if you're a partisan and in control to not like this, but our opposition is really just trying to confuse people. They're just putting out misinformation, and they're making wild statements that are completely unbased. And so our challenge right now is to really pump out the information about what is 140 and who's it for and why is it important. And in particular, this basic message of giving independents full status as voters in our state and treating everyone equally. That's what this is about. And the way the opposition has twisted that around in 100 different ways is kind of shocking. It's surprised me, but you know, we're sticking to our message, and we know our messages carry with the majority of Arizonans. So that's what we're counting on to take us over the line.
That's
I think
great.
the interesting thing in Alaska is that our opponents aren't even mentioning they're closing the primaries. So I was talking to a Yes on 2 supporter over the last week and said that, oh, this ballot measure 2 would also close the primaries. It's not just getting rid of ranked choice voting. And they were shocked. And I said, go back and check with those Yes on 2 people. And I think that's the best way that I've been able to convert people to our cause, is because all they're doing is pointing at ranked choice voting, and they're saying, oh, it's confusing, oh, it's expensive, all of these things, and throwing a bunch of misinformation out there. But they actually don't even admit they want to close the primaries. And so when we call them on it and let folks know, because open primaries are very popular in Alaska. So obviously we want people to know, and our campaign has mostly been about stressing that open primary, but the opposition campaign has been all about closing down ranked choice voting.
That's interesting, because right, you had an open primary for 60 years since your founding as a state. Interesting.
And 60% of Alaskan voters are not registered with a party. And so the majority
Right.
of Alaskan voters are independents.
Got it.
John, in Montana.
Yeah.
In Montana, what we're seeing, just as an overarching theme, is a lot of fear-based communication to try and scare people that change is not what they're looking for. There's communication about costs that would go up, and it would cost everybody a lot of money. There's fierce independence among Montanans, and they're saying it'll just turn us into some of these other liberal states. And there's a lot of communication about outside money. That's been an issue in Montana for years. So there's a lot of fear-based communication, but when you sit down with individual voters and start to lay out what these 2 reforms will do, and you explain to them that in red states, it's the Republican Party that doesn't like this. In the blue states, just as Lisa described, it's the Democratic Party that doesn't like this. It's the parties not wanting to let go of the power that they have been able to grab a hold of since 1904, when we went to this primary system. That really starts to speak to folks, and they realize, oh, maybe this is about the voter, and we need to take that power away from the parties.
And in purple states, both the Republicans and the Democrats are coming after.
Well, in South Dakota, which is a red state, every party boss hates it. And we found some party bosses don't understand it. They truly do not understand how it works. So they're spreading misinformation that way. The libertarians are against it. I mean, anyone who's in power currently with the current system is against it. People that have retired from political service are huge supporters. So it makes sense. And, you know, I'll describe it to people and people will say, we have to vote on that? Like, isn't that just an obvious thing? It's like, No, we have to
Yeah.
vote on this.
Yeah.
So our party bosses hate it.
Yeah.
I was I was speaking
They
a
spread
couple
lots of
days
lies.
ago at a town hall event in a rural county in Idaho that I think went for Trump by about 80-20. And an angry person in the back stood up and said, if this is such a good idea, why are they only doing it in red states? Clearly it's a left-wing plot. Why wouldn't they try it anywhere else? And Lisa, you'd be happy to hear I was able to stand up and say, well, in fact, sir, and I listed several of the states where these reforms are happening, and I was able to say, in one of the bluest communities in the country, Washington, D.C., they're running a very similar campaign, and you might be surprised to know that in DC, it's the Democratic Party establishment that opposes it. And I was able to explain, David, exactly what you pointed to a moment ago. And that very much has been the pattern in Idaho. It's entrenched power that benefits from the broken system that is uniformly against the initiative. And one of the biggest surprises, at least not entirely a surprise, but the kind of scale of it has been a pleasant surprise, is how many vocal Republicans have come out on our side who really see this as a way to get back to a different type of Republican Party politics that they associate with the more of the distant past, and especially just to get back to a more truly representative system.
Right.
And
All
Nevada,
right.
we're dealing with many of the same issues. Unfortunately, we have well-funded opposition there as well that are spending $10 to $12 million against the initiative. The extremism, it's gotten to the point where the misinformation is so bad. The recent mailer sent out by the opposition claims that supporters of our initiative are mega extremists.
Mm.
And John, just to underscore, oh, sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just to underscore like how far the parties will go to maintain their power. Here in Colorado, where Democrats hold a near supermajority in both chambers, in the waning hours of the last legislative session, even before our ballot measure was on the ballot, they passed a poison pill. They inserted into an amendment in a normal elections bill to prevent the implementation of open primaries, ranked choice voting here in Colorado, even if the voters say yes. And then they went through all types of contortions to be able to do that legislatively. So and just think about that. They're trying to take away the vote of the people at the ballot in November before something's even on the ballot. So they will go to great lengths to make sure that people don't have the right to vote. It's amazing, and it's stunning at times.
Yeah, in Arizona, the legislature put their own referendum on the ballot that's 180 degrees. It will constitutionalize partisan primaries. And it's a confusing technique. And they're also put on the ballot a number of things that will make citizens' initiatives harder. And they just don't like anything about it. And they've made our ballot very long. It's now up to 3 pages in Maricopa County, I think.
Wow.
Because we're voting on all the judges. And so it's a long ballot. There's confusing initiatives. There's misinformation. And, we're doing our best. And really our most successful message is this is about giving full status to independent voters and candidates and treating everybody the same way and giving politicians and would-be politicians and office holders the incentive to represent everyone.
On the day that one of our mailers went out for 126 here in Montana, I also received in the mail a flyer from the Central Committee of my county telling Republican voters exactly who they were supposed to vote for on every issue on the upcoming election. It showed you exactly what they were supposed to do. And one of the things that I've heard from voters is that parties right now want to dumb down elections so that, and they'll tell people exactly what to vote for up and down the ballot. And I think it's really incumbent and important to communicate that we need an electorate that is engaged in thinking about issues and studying. And one of the individuals, a veteran that I spoke to, said, you know what, these reforms, not only is it going to be better for voters, but it's going to make it harder for the candidates, because they're going to, instead of having these easy just check the box flyers that they can send out, they're actually going to have to start talking about issues and where they stand on issues, rather than making it about party politics.
Right, right. No, that's very well put. All right, we've got 15 minutes left. We have one more commercial. Let's roll the clip. This is from Steve Wesley, the former controller of California. Then we're going to open it up for your questions.
Hi, I'm Steve Wesley, former California state controller. I'm a longtime champion of open primaries. 20 years ago, California politics was so divided that we couldn't even pass a budget, and the state was on the brink of bankruptcy. I was there. I saw it firsthand. Our politics was so paralyzed that nothing was getting done. But in 2010, we got rid of partisan gerrymandering and enacted the open primary system. Things changed for the better almost immediately. Politicians can do their jobs now, and candidates compete in open primaries in public, not partisan primaries. The power of political parties and special interest groups has been reduced, and voters have a meaningful choice again. This is exactly how we end the partisan divide and the tribal politics holding our nation back. I'm thrilled that this November, in 7 states and Washington, D.C., we'll have the chance to do what California voters did 14 years ago. Open up the system and let all voters vote. Thanks again for being here tonight. Let's move the nation forward.
Thank you, Steve. He couldn't be with us tonight, but he wanted to send his support. All right, we're going to open it up now for your questions. The first one is from Tom Johnson in North Carolina. Go ahead, Tom. Ask your question.
Have there been any lawsuits seeking to defund primaries that exclude voters?
Yes. Arizona is part of our measure is no tax dollars to fund partisan elections that exclude independents and unaffiliated voters. And we've just lived through a tremendous series of lawsuits. They challenges us on pretty much everything, appealed when they lost. We won the appeals, but the Supreme Court actually broke 80 years of precedent to keep questions open after ballots were already printed. So it was a big fight.
Sounds like. Thank you.
There's also, Tom, so you know, there's litigation being developed in a number of states. The one that's most advanced is in Pennsylvania. And I don't want to speak for the attorneys there, but broad strokes, they're putting together a group of plaintiffs that are independent voters from, I think, half the counties in the state. It's not 1 or 2 people. It's a whole group of people. And they're going to challenge the violation of their First Amendment rights, because the state is essentially telling them that they have to join a private organization in order to vote in a publicly funded election. And they're going to make the claim that that's a violation of their First Amendment rights. As citizens, no one should be required to join a private group. Imagine if it was required that you be in the Elks Club or the Rotary Club in order to vote. Like, people would revolt. And we're going to challenge that in court. But I think your question is a good one, because we've not yet sufficiently used the courts to raise a lot of these questions. Any other legal efforts going on in any of your other states that we're not aware of? Anything happening there before we move on to the next question?
in DC, I think you might be aware that the DC Dems filed a couple of suits that were thrown out of lower court that are now in the appeals court. I actually spent a couple of hours today with the law firm that filed an amicus brief on our behalf, and we will see what happens in the appeals court on Wednesday, although it's sort of like the horse has already left the barn or whatever that saying is, because they were trying to keep us off the ballot. But not only are we on the ballot, but people are voting on it. People have already started voting on it. So not sure what's going to happen there, but I think all good things for us. Again, we're the ones that want everybody to vote. We want to take it to the people.
I love it. No, it's very exciting. All right, our next question comes from Joel Waltzer. Go ahead, Joel.
I just want, my question was whether this is affecting young people more than older folks. Is I think people who are younger tend to want to become independent, and whether any efforts are being made to reach out to those generations specifically, says the old guy.
Yeah. So what's it like? What are you connecting with young people in your campaigns? What's that look like?
That's a great question from Joel. I just spoke at Carroll College, which is one of our really high performing colleges here in the state of Montana. And there were 50 kids who turned out for a forum at the college, and they were super interested. There were several topics presented to the students about the upcoming election, and 99% of the questions were about open primaries and majority winners for the general election. They're super interested. And I think there's a very high percent, somewhere in the 40s, where young people are declaring to be independent voters. They don't want to identify as with a party. So those are the folks who I think are really going to start to, as they age into this, they're really going to start to push states to adopt these different reforms.
Yeah, the stats are a majority of young people now don't like either party. So eventually everything's going to go our way, because I think it's even higher than 40%. I think it's something like 60% of young people don't like the parties.
Yes, it's close to that.
I want to give a shout out to an organization that's really active in Idaho and some other has some branches in other states as well, called Babe Vote, a youth organization, student-led organization that is working on voting issues, voting access, and has been fully behind the open primaries ranked choice voting campaign here in Idaho. You actually, Babe Vote is in the chat. You can check out their website.
Oh, all right.
babevote.org. And
Babe Vote.
That's been that's really been the heart and soul of our young voter effort here in Idaho.
Here in DC, of course, we have college students in from all over the country, and I have spoken in the last year on panels at Georgetown University and Howard University, actually 3 different panels at Howard, one which was hosted by the Forward Party, and some of our volunteers for the campaign have come out of those discussions that I've had with college students who are done, 100% done with the parties.
Wow.
They're like, no mas, nope. You're not having it anymore. So it's very invigorating to speak on a college campus right now. And I actually do that. I'm like, when's my next thing with college students? I need something to jazz me up. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore, younger voters are our voters, for all the reasons that everybody said. They're unaffiliating with the parties, they're over the parties. In Colorado, I think 60%, 65% of young voters are unaffiliated in Colorado. And so we've been going, much like you, Lisa, to college campuses. We've done 2 debates on the University of Denver campus. We have a 3rd one coming up. We just partnered with Young Fortis on a panel at Mason University on the western side of the state. So we're excited about being in a presidential election cycle where we expect to have a much higher youth turnout, because I think youth power us to victory.
That's great. All right, we got 5 minutes left. We're going to do one last poll question. I'm going to ask one final question. We're going to wrap things up here. So our final poll question for everyone in the audience is, in one sentence, text your one sentence answer to the question, why do we need open primaries in our country? Text your short answer to 22333. Again, the question is, why do we need open primaries in this country, in our country? Text your one sentence answer to 22333. All right, lightning round. 15 days to the election. How's it going? What do you need? What's your biggest challenge? Boom.
We need people to call independents here in DC and just let them know about the initiative. That's our biggest need. Phone banking, phone banking, phone banking.
Yeah, I would say in Arizona, that's what we need. We need to really emphasize what Prop 140 does, emphasize that it's to level the playing field and to help stop all this crazy disinformation that's coming out of both parties right now. So the more people we can talk to and clarify, yeah.
Voter contact and phone banking. I think all of us have phone banking operations that we can use volunteers for. And then I'm going to drop, at least for Colorado, our social media toolkit and the chat. There's a lot of ways to get the message. We got to get the voters. So any help that people can provide there be greatly appreciated.
Great.
It's the same story in Montana. There's this need for short, simple, precise communication, because once people hear about what these reforms do, 80% are on board. Even folks who had preconceived notions, they had heard some media from the opposition. Once they hear the details, they're on board. And so the more we can communicate that is really critical. We're having a couple of events here in Montana where we're going to be showing the movie Majority Rules in Bozeman on the 30th of October, in Billings on the 1st of November, and we're inviting the public to join us. And phone banking is great, and just hitting the streets. It's really effective.
Right.
We have the same story.
I'll speak up for Majority Rules as well. We've had a lot of successful screenings all across Idaho of the Majority Rules film. Our number one need, I would say, for people on this call really is phone banking. We've learned that our core message is stronger than the opposition's core message. So we just need to communicate with as many voters as possible in the final stretch.
Great.
In Nevada, what we need most is additional resources for paid communication. We're expecting our opposition to spend approximately $12 million on paid TV, digital, and mail at this point.
Okay.
Keeping up.
In South Dakota, we're sticking to the key messages that work, and we're finding more and more we're able to refine what messages resonate the most with people. And so we're really laser focused on that.
Great. Andrew, any last observations or comments, thoughts?
Just that this is extraordinarily uplifting to see the activists who are making it happen at the state level. And this is the race within the race, or race beyond the race. I mean, everyone right now is thinking, hey, who's going to win in November? And the question for us all is, are the people going to win? No, like the dust is going to clear, and we're going to look up and see how many of these 8 states have voted in open primaries, how many voters have a real chance at realigning American politics. So we matter again. Just want to say thank you to everyone who's here for rolling up your sleeves and making it a reality. It's awesome. It's extraordinarily uplifting. I saw in the text someone just said Patriots, and it wasn't a New England Patriots fan. It was someone describing the folks in the room, and I couldn't agree more. it's invigorating to be among such American patriots, really excited for what your efforts could lead to in just a few short weeks. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart as a parent, really. You all give me a lot of hope.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's been great doing this with you. And thank all of you for taking an hour out of your night to participate in this conversation. You will be getting a follow-up email, or actually several emails in the next couple days, with ways that you can donate to one of these campaigns or all of these campaigns. My recommendation is donate to all of them. Break into an IRA or a savings bond and give as much as you can to each one of these campaigns. They need the resources. There's also ways to help with social media, with phone banking, and other ways to volunteer. You'll be getting a follow-up email with all of that in one easy place, so you don't have to write anything down tonight and figure that out. We've got 15 days to the election. Let's leave it all on the field. As I mentioned before, none of these campaigns is a slam dunk. The opposition is doing all kinds of things above board and below board to make sure they fail. We've got to counter that with people power. So let's make this happen. Thank you to our panelists. Keep up the great work. You're really inspiring. And thank you all for coming. Let's go kick some. Have a great night.